on time, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody who is on the call and who's joined us today. This is our last lead series of the year. Thank you so much for participating in all of our monthly sessions, and we really appreciate your input and your participation. This is no different. This is going to be a very interactive session. Erin has a wonderful hour planned for us, so please engage through the chat or out loud if you'd like. We definitely hope for that. I will be managing the chat, so if any questions come through there, I'm happy to bounce back to Erin, or he and I can go do it together, whatever works. But I would like to introduce Erin at this point. Erin Dimmock is a retired naval officer and aviator, and has had the privilege of serving in various managerial and leadership positions for over 20 years. Most notably, he has had the opportunity to serve as the Navy representative to the senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense for Military Professionalism at the Pentagon, the CEO of a Navy recruiting district, and as a mission commander and instructor pilot in multiple tours of duty. A graduate of the United States Naval Academy, Erin is currently working towards his PhD while studying how Candor shapes and sustains group performance. Erin and his wife Kim have been married for over 23 years and are blessed with the presence of 4 children in their lives: Camden, Kinsley, Amelia, and Peyton. Welcome, Erin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you very much for the invitation. It was an wonderful opportunity to meet you, holy cow, maybe almost a month ago now for getting ready for this particular conversation, and great to be with you all today. I would love to extend a warm invitation for everyone. If you have the capability, would love to be able to see you through your video camera. So if you have that capability, the invitation is open to go ahead and turn those all on, as many of you as have the capability, again, because it would be great to see you all. So the ones that have turned on so far, love the backgrounds, love the snow cap. I don't even know what's on the purple snow cap. Let's see, is it coffee?
It's a melting pot fondue pot.
Oh my gosh.
Where did you I'm having lunch too.
No, that's awesome. Where did you get that? And yes, I will ask you a question while your mouth is full of food.
That's fine. I used to manage the melting pot in Boise, Idaho.
Aha. Fantastic. Thanks, Allie. Awesome. Well, great to see everybody's faces. And yeah, really excited, looking forward to this particular conversation about radical candor, and actually dive in a little bit, hopefully challenge each other with a specific situation, and then try to help us out. And we'll have that conversation. I'll go in and out of presenting content. As Natalie had mentioned, like, put whatever questions you have in chat, or even better, thoughts and ideas that you would just be willing to share with this group in real time as you have them. And then we'll save quite a chunk of time to the second half of the hour for any questions and answers you may have in general. So we can just land on topics that are pertinent to you. And again, let's get going. So my first question for you, to use chat and go ahead and do a quick check-in. A little bit of guidance here for you is, please go ahead and type into chat one of 3 words: red, yellow, or green. And you're going to type out the color based on how you're feeling joining this session right now. Red means, boy, it's really busy, I'm really challenged. Yellow means, there aren't too many fires that I'm putting out. And green means it's been a great day, and I'm really ready for this conversation. So go ahead and enter red, yellow, or green into the chat, and then we'll see what we come up with here for folks that are able to join us today. Right on.
Can you see the chat?
I can, yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, lots of.
Yeah, so we have, looks like a mix of greens and yellows with a few reds. There are a few more reds. I love it. There's always someone that's more creative than me. Glenn, blue, green, love it. Let's see what else is out there. Terrific. So yeah, keep them coming in. Red, yellow combination. Terrific. So we're going to dive in on a few of these just to get an appreciation for how everybody is arriving today. So Regina, if you wouldn't mind starting us off with why green? You put green. Why are you feeling green today?
Hi, sorry, I'm eating my lunch.
You're
Apologies.
totally good. Natalie and I just got done before coming on the call.
Yep.
So my understanding was it was corresponding with sort of how our day was. My day is actually kind of manageable and enjoyable today.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Awesome to hear. And is that the norm for you typically, or is it a little
No, it's not the norm. That's why I'm really enjoying it and eating my lunch.
less? Fantastic. Good deal. And thanks for sharing. Hiro, how about you? You have yellow. Why yellow?
I've got a couple of reports I'm trying to get out today, so it's just hard finding a good block of time where I don't get interrupted and trying to concentrate on developing those reports for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally hear you. And thanks for sharing for sure. Nora, you have red, my friend. So why red today?
Because it's been a very busy day. I have been putting out fires all day long, and it seems like the rest of the day is going to look like that as well, though. So that's why red.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And maybe this now 50-minute conversation will be a little bit of break in that crazy, realizing that it's not going to change. It's still going to be there when you're done, but we so appreciate your time and joining us for sure. Dave, you have yellow. Dave Maples, you have yellow. Why yellow?
Similar to Hero, just a lot of things on the frying pan today, trying to knock them out and finding time for it.
Right on. Absolutely. And Lisa, you have red. Why red for you today?
Because I'm an accountant. It's year end. And
Yep.
all of a sudden we have 8 weeks of work to do in 3 weeks.
Unbelievable. Yes, exactly. So that time limited and the stress is going up, the demand's going up, got to get stuff done. Totally hear the red in your situation. Is it Bridget or Brigid? Green as well. How about you? Why green?
It's Bridget.
All right.
I'm totally buried, swamped, so I'm feeling green because this gives me a nice break from the technical portion of my job to a more esoteric human related portion.
Yay, fantastic. Fantastic. Great to hear. And we'll build on that for sure. Thanks, Bridget. Bridget, absolutely. Let's see. We'll do a couple more. Kevin Pierce, you're yellow. Why yellow today?
Yeah, just I work in IT and we have some big vulnerabilities out there that I'm having to deal with, and also installing a new auditing system in our environment. So
Yeah, gotcha. Absolutely. So Glenn, I called you out before with the blue green. So now I'm coming back to you. White, blue, green. And if you are talking, you might still be on mute. All right.
He might have stepped away for a second.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So we'll go to Catherine now. Red, yellow. There's a red, yellow in betweener there. Why red, yellow? Thanks, Natalie.
Oh, sorry, it took me a second to get off mute.
No problem.
I was debating whether I actually had tentatively accepted this appointment because I was just, had things up in the air, wasn't sure if I was going to get some things completed or not. And I actually did get a deliverable out this morning. So I kind of feel like a little bit of a weight has been lifted. And so I thought I'd, check in and see what this presentation was about.
That's awesome and great to have you with us and totally hear you. Totally understand. Thanks, Catherine. So my question for everybody, and thank you again very much for your willingness to put it into chat. Why start a conversation around radical candor this way? To ask you how you're arriving, red, yellow, or green. Why start this way? And whoever has a thought, you're welcome to come off of mute and just let the group know. If you want to type it into chat, that's perfectly fine as well.
To get familiar with everybody and find out exactly what each one may be going through on any given day.
Fantastic, Alvin. Absolutely. Great start. You bet. More than just check. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt there.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, I think just inherently, in order to to learn and practice radical candor, you have to be particularly present and strip away the things that might be bearing down on you. So that's probably a factor.
Absolutely. Thanks, Christian. How about one more thought?
Helps you to understand your audience.
Very interesting. Thanks, Craig. And yes, and not just for my benefit, you're exactly right. Certainly me as I'm staying tuned in, dialed in, and seeing what folks offer, but also everyone else on the cohort, everyone else in this conversation. Now we checked in with each other in a way that allows us to be able to acknowledge, accept, and appreciate how we're all arriving. So we're not going to change red to yellow. We're not going to change yellows to greens per se, and we may lose a couple of greens because of the conversation we have. Like, there are only certain things that we can influence through conversation, but the fact that you all showed up, willingness to share, participate in this particular hour conversation, there's something to be said for that. And yes, so that we can all appreciate and understand how we're arriving, that's exactly why we ask a question like this. So even consider doing it with your teams in ECC. Like, this is a way that you can open your meeting. Spend a couple of minutes up front. How is everybody doing? And ask it in a very specific way, and then have folks share out. Because if you have a team member that's arriving angry, arriving very happy, arriving confused, it's actually beneficial to know that. We may not change angry, happy, confused, but we can appreciate how folks are arriving, because that's absolutely going to impact the conversation we're going to have. So thank you all very much. And again, welcome. Moving on from the check-in, I'd like to go ahead and set the stage with just a brief story about a time I received radical candor. And then we'll move into the framework itself, and then have an opportunity to practice interacting with the framework before we get into 2 orders of operation. So thanks for humoring me with the brief story, but here we go. So almost 31 years now, January 1st, 1991. My dad, Wayne, sat my younger brother, John, and I down in our family room while my mom, Catherine, was off at work to let us know that he no longer loved her and they were going to get ready to go through a divorce. And among the things of, hey, what's the conversation we're going to have when mom gets home, and what does it look like? Because it was January 1st, we were on holiday vacation, holiday break. And I don't remember what really much happened those first few days, but I do know a couple weeks into this, my mom offered my brother and I a choice to either stay where we were at living, given the circumstances, or move. And so for me, I was a junior in high school at the time. My brother was a freshman. And I knew, being a junior heading into spring semester junior year, I was getting ready to apply for colleges and universities. So I knew, regardless of staying there in that high school or moving to a different one, I still had to work hard for the grades and be able to compete for application to different places. So I knew that was probably the same. So the other criteria I used to try to help me make my decision was the world of sport. And I had the opportunity in high school to participate in football, basketball, and baseball. And for basketball and baseball, both my sophomore and junior year, had the opportunity to participate at the varsity level. So when I checked in with those coaches and let them know my particular situation, they shared their care and concern for my situation, and also said, absolutely, continuing, if you stay here, you definitely have a starting role on each of these teams. So I knew I was good there, which left me with my football coach, Coach Dave Enright. And checking in with him, he was really a father figure to me for the last several years. He was the reason that I was on the football team. He saw me play in middle school, and now I was on the high school team. But as a sophomore and junior, I was the backup quarterback. And for this particular public high school program, we had a huge team. I had 103 team members. And Coach Dave at the time was a scout for the Oakland Raiders in the National Football League. So now the Las Vegas Raiders, for anyone who follows the NFL. And with that type of program, especially in that position of quarterback, senior year was really your time to start and shine. So I knew that was coming up. And when I sat down to have this conversation with him, again, he was familiar with my family situation. We had a terrific relationship. And when I asked him, he said, you know, Aaron, I am bringing in a new offensive coordinator as we head into the spring and get ready for the summer. And because of that, we're going to change up the playbook a little bit. And while you have a cannon for an arm and throw it really well, you pass really well, you're slow. And I don't know that you have the speed we need and that ability to be able to take over the starting role, because we're changing the offense. So at a minimum, you're going to be competing with 3 other teammates. So I can't guarantee you a starting position. And in the moment, certainly, I felt the care personally. He was taking a 17-year-old seriously. We were having this conversation. We had the relationship, and he was willing to challenge me on my ability that wasn't quite where he had hoped for that particular new offense. So based on that information, I went back to my mom, Catherine, and brother John, and just let them know, hey, if you all want to move, I'm good moving. And sure enough, we did end up making the decision to move. So we moved over the summertime. I did go to a different high school my senior year. I did have the opportunity to start at the quarterback position and play football, basketball, and baseball. I was afforded an opportunity to attend the United States Naval Academy. And a year into that experience, when I came back home, I met my now wife of over 23 years, Kim, not Kim Scott from Radical Candor, but a different Kim, on a blind date. And now here we are over 23 years later. We do have the 4 kiddos, 2 are in college, 1 in high school, 1 in middle school. And after I graduated from the Naval Academy, I was offered an appointment, a commission as an officer, as Natalie had mentioned, and then went right down to flight school to start training. And of the many missions I had the opportunity to fly during my 20-year career, one of them actually happened to be the privilege of flying over New York City, Ground Zero, on September 11th, 2001, to provide imagery, surveillance, and communications through that evening, the efforts that were going on there. And then as we were patrolling the North Atlantic coast, not knowing what was coming next, and then successive missions around the world, obviously, in the wake of that. And then I did culminate my tour working for the Secretary of Defense, looking at leadership and character development across all the armed services. And that's where I met Kim Scott, the author of Radical Candor. I was getting ready to retire. She was looking to form the Radical Candor team. She made the offer. I said, absolutely, this sounds awesome. So I'm literally standing virtually in front of you all today having this conversation because of a radically candid conversation I had with my football coach almost 31 years ago. So I appreciate you listening, for one. 2, the elements that are really pertinent here for moving forward is in the moment with Coach Dave, I was willing to listen because he cared personally for me. I knew he did. The words he shared, the manners in which he behaved around me, and was willing to challenge me directly, specifically on the skill. And that helped me make a decision with my family to literally change my life trajectory. That lands me here talking about it. So as we move forward, those 2 primary elements are caring personally and challenging directly. Those are the components that make up Radical Candor. So let's talk about these axes really quickly that form the framework, and then we'll get into the quick activity. So taking the care personally axis first, this is affectionately referred to as the give a damn axis. And this means that if we're going to care personally for each other, that I do give a damn about the person that I'm talking with, having the conversation with, because we know that that's the way to have productive, effective conversations. And there's a level of being professional that's totally appropriate, but being just professional can actually be limiting in our conversations, because I actually privilege being professional and not saying certain things that maybe I should. So that's why we're nudging toward building our whole self into our work and being willing to be more than just professional. So here's the list. If we start in the middle, if professional is kind of like the starting point, if we're less than that, then this is the space of apathy, which is I just don't care. I show up and I don't care what happens. Then even below that is a fancy term called pseudo-speciation, which you could refer to it as office BS, but the fancy term really means that if I think of a team member as less than human, then it's easier for me to talk hurtful things to them. Like, I don't see them as a team member. I don't see them as equal to me. So I'm going to bash them in some way. That's the exact opposite of what we're going for with care personally. So let's work back up from professional. We actually do give a damn. We show folks that we care, even by listening to them. Listening is a way to actualize caring personally in the moment for the individual, because we're willing to give them our time and attention for what they have to say. And then the level above that is this unconditional positive regard, or love, a platonic sense of love with our team members, such that we care personally so much that that positive regard, I hold you in a good light. I assume you're positively intended. That's what it looks like. So that's the give a damn axis. Next is the challenge, or the care personally give a damn axis. Next is the challenge directly axis. And this can be referred to as the willing to piss people off axis. And it is harsher language, yes. This is not the goal, by the way. We're not trying to piss people off necessarily. It's just the fact that we're willing to go there. We're willing to have the conversation. And we have to accept a little bit of that risk of getting emotional and ticking people off, because we've discerned that it's something to talk about. And what makes this kind of scratchy is because most societies around the globe have some conditioning factor that's like this. If you don't have anything nice to say, you just don't say it at all. And that's a huge limiter, especially in leadership and management supervisor positions. If we're trying to be nice, the stuff that doesn't get talked about can then be harmful because precisely it's not being talked about or addressed. So in these positions of management, supervisors, leadership, it's our job to actually say it. And we have to flip that switch to say, hey, can we talk about this? Yes, we can. So this is the conversation we need to have. And then on the flip side, on the receiving side, we have to understand and appreciate, even caring personally, that if someone's coming to me with a subject for a conversation, I should be assuming positive intent on their behalf and be willing to listen. So that's what it takes. Caring personally, challenging directly, put both of those together. That's the space of radical candor. And I use the example of Coach Dave. Next is this space where we challenge directly, but don't care personally in the moment, or the challenge is so heavy that the other person doesn't hear the care personally or feel it. Next is the space of manipulative insincerity, where I don't care personally in the moment and I don't challenge them directly. And then finally, there's this space of ruinous empathy, which is where we care personally so much that we either don't offer the challenge, or the care personally means I don't say it as loud. I don't want to embarrass them. I'll kick the can. Maybe they'll figure it out. And we'll talk about a couple more specifics as we move forward with each of these. The space of obnoxious aggression, to use harsher language, this is where the jerks and the assholes on our team reside. Like this is where brutal honesty exists. And we have those members on our team where they come so heavy with the challenge that on the receiving end, I'm like, wow, this is a real struggle to listen to this person and pay any attention to them. So the cool thing about obnoxious aggression, if anything, there is a point, at least they get the challenge out there. If their tone is offensive, okay, but it does give the challenge. At least we understand where they're coming from. So there is a benefit to just having the challenge directly. At least we know. The next space of manipulative insincerity, this is where gossip, water cooler talk, backstabbing, politicking take place. Because I'm not caring personally in the moment for the individual. I'm not challenging them directly. I'm actually talking, let's say Catherine and I are having a conversation about Allie. And I'm the one that's leading the conversation. I'm talking to Catherine about Allie, and I never talk to Allie about it. That's manipulative, because I'm saying something counter about a different person that's not even there in the conversation. And at some point that can catch up with both the person that should hear it and me, because I'm telling Catherine and not Allie. And then finally, there's this space of ruinous empathy. Again, the care personally comes across so much that we discount our own challenge and we don't offer it up. An example here briefly could be like a team member that's just an awesome person, but it's not that they stink at or suck at their job, but they're just not doing it as well as they could be or should be. But because they're a really good person, I say, well, they'll figure it out. Or, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings. And then so 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, or maybe even longer, their performance is still substandard. And now we're having a very different conversation that they need to go to some other team where they're just no longer going to be with us, where we could have had that conversation 3, 6, 12 months prior. That's the ruinous proposition, where we privilege empathy way more than actually just telling them and helping them out. So those are the 4 quadrants, a quick jaunt or travel around them. And now we're going to have the opportunity for, just as an example, how is it that we would share bad news from each of these quadrants? So I would love for you all to think just in silence for the next minute or two about how you shared bad news, or, you know, a failure or something that you learned the hard way. And I'll pull those quadrants back up because I would love to hear from 4 of us, one from each of these quadrants, for how you would share bad news. What would it sound like? What words would you use? Or what would it look like if you're not telling the person that actually needs to hear it? What would it look like? So again, I'll give you 2 minutes. I'll check in with you at 2 minutes and see who would like to offer up how you would share bad news, what words you would use, what it would look like from each of these quadrants for different people. So I'll be back with you in about 1.5 minutes now. Yeah, and if it is helpful, go ahead and write it down on a notepad or type it out on a device, whatever's helpful for you, and then I'll ask 4 people to share with us. Thanks. Good deal. So that's been a couple of minutes. So if there's one of you that was ready to go, just let everyone know as you come off mute what quadrant you're coming from and what is it that you would say, how would it look? So whoever would like to go first. And you'll come to find that I'm perfectly comfortable with long silences. So whenever anyone is ready, go for it to get us started. Which quadrant you're coming from? What message would you send? What would it sound like? What would it look like?
This is Margie. I can do it.
Yeah, fantastic. So I saw and heard 2 come on. I heard Margie. Who else was in there?
It was Kim, but that's okay. Let Margie go.
Yeah, Margie, you're up. Fantastic.
Okay, I'm going to do, I guess, the obnoxious aggression. So,
Okay.
hey, Karen, do you have that report done yet? I asked you 2 days ago. Where is it?
Absolutely. And even a little bit in the tone, right? Like
Yep.
coming strong, and you could even be a little harsher there if you wanted, and raising your hands, pounding the desk. Absolutely. Thanks, Margie. So obnoxious aggression example. Kim, did you have a different block, different quadrant example?
Yeah, I was thinking radical candor because I usually have to tell senior leadership that we've had an incident because they get reported to me. So when I do that, I try to put all the facts up front and just say, hey, look, we just had an individual that slipped on a slope, ended up breaking his ankle. I don't have any more details. That kind of thing, and just give everything all up front as clear and concise as I can.
That's fantastic. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Margie. So we have radical candor and obnoxious aggression taken care of. How about manipulative insincerity or ruinous empathy? What would those look like? And I suppose it is likely that we all came up with radical candor or obnoxious aggression responses. So they all could already be spoken for. But my guess is the group is big enough that at least one person has one of these. And I think I saw someone come up. I'm sorry if I cut you off.
No worries. I'll take the ruinous empathy. I think this kind of comes into play when we have the performance reviews where people give overly good reviews on sometimes bad behavior. So for example, if somebody is not accurate in their reports that they're providing, saying, oh, you're doing a really wonderful job, and just focusing on the positive versus actually, getting to the meat of what could, good criticism, not criticism to the say, but constructive criticism is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. No, that's huge and a perfect example, Natalie, of ruinous empathy. Absolutely. Not even including the stuff that's the bad news, the challenge. Terrific. All right, that leaves us with manipulative insincerity. Who's got one?
How about if you have a staff direct report or something, and another person in the organization has reported back that your direct report has failed in some way, or not met a deadline, or provided a poor product to that other internal client, instead of directing the issue and helping the direct report understand where they may have slipped up, or help them resolve the shortcomings, direct the issue back at the person who, the internal customer, so to speak, and telling your direct report that it's really that person's fault, and that that you did everything right. It's really their fault, and not to worry about it, or something like that.
Yeah, just fascinating. Absolutely. Another perfect example. And who was that again? I didn't catch.
It's Christian.
Christian. Yeah, fantastic. And that's just it. Really, the crux of the manipulative piece is that the person that needs to hear it isn't, for whatever reason. And so we're by avoiding that conversation, we're actually doing a disservice to that other person. And in some instances, it may even be malicious, right? Like we're trying to set up someone to look at or something like that. So it can go really south in a hurry. But another great example, Christian. So thank you. And thank you all for offering up. So Margie, Kim, Natalie, and Christian, offering up your perspective for one, what it looks like for just something like sharing bad news, what it can look like from each quadrant, and then acknowledging really the impact and the power of the framework to give us a language to talk about these things. Because then if we can shed some light on these circumstances, we can now make us all more aware of what's going on, and then figure out together what to do to address these things moving forward. So really appreciate the engagement there. As we move forward, there are two primary things we can do, specifically even in this space of sharing bad news. Like if there was a slip up, if there's a safety issue, or there was somebody that did something that they shouldn't have, or didn't do something that they should have. So we're going to focus in on two very specific things, and then I'm happy to open it up to questions fully. So, and feel free to type any of those questions in. Natalie's watching, she's reading the chat. Feel free to catch them in or put them in the chat. So first, we're going to talk about getting it. Actually asking very specific, clear questions on a regular basis on our own accord to try to encourage these types of conversations so that we stay ahead of them and create an environment where folks feel like they can share it. And then we have to show that we're listening. So get it and then listen. So, good listening takes a lot of energy, by the way. So getting feedback or soliciting these types of questions to create an environment within which folks feel they can legitimately share. Some research from Forbes about 4 years ago showed that there's a direct correlation between the frequency with which we ask for feedback and the effectiveness of our leadership from the perspective of our team members, which is really fascinating. So folks see us more effective as a leader, a supervisor, manager, leader, someone in a leader type role, the more we ask for feedback. Because the more we ask for it, the more aware we're going to be for ourselves. And it's showing vulnerability on our part to let others in. We want their perspectives, and it invites them in to contribute. So the research shows this direct correlation. The more we ask, the better we are perceived as a leader. So what is it that we can do when we're asking? Typically, this should be done in one-on-ones to kind of de-escalate the emotion or someone being publicly lashed out at or whatever it is. In our one-on-ones, whether it's with our direct reports or just folks that we interact with regularly, taking advantage of an opportunity to ask them. So we want to have a go-to question. I'll give a couple examples in just a second on the next slide, but go-to questions, really good go-to questions are open questions, not easily answered by a yes or no, to get people thinking about it. And they typically begin with how, what, why. Next is to embrace the discomfort here, because there are some things, quite frankly, that we may not fully want to know about. Like there are things that either we don't fully want to know about or we're anxious about what people might say. So the invitation is really to embrace this discomfort and kind of get over it, because we need to have these conversations. And there's plenty of research that says the more we ask, even when we're making errors, when we're failing, the more we ask each other about this and talk about the errors and issues of safety, the less incidents we actually have. So it's incredible to be able to get over this mental hurdle, to embrace that potential discomfort. And then when you're asking and given their perspective, listen with the intent to understand, not respond. So no kidding, when you ask these questions, and this is why we'll talk about listening in just a second, listening to understand is key here. Because if someone offers us something and it is bad news and we're just not in the mind to hear it, if we do lash out back at them or we're like, no, not now, I can't deal with this right now, then the next time we go back to ask them for something, they're less and less likely each time to give us anything, because they know we're going to shut them down and we're going to tune them out because we just don't want to hear it. So we have to get over that by just listening to understand, which means we're accepting their perspective, giving them the floor, and then being willing to think on it. So not discount it completely in the moment, just being willing to think further about it, and then maybe even continue the conversation. And this is what helps folks continue to share, because we're willing to listen to understand. Then what we choose to do with it after we've thought about it a bit, and maybe even we figure out what to do together, which is even better. Once we've afforded that opportunity, agreeing and disagreeing with the perspective of another person is almost irrelevant. Like if it's a concern for them, then I need to pay attention to that and listen, even if I don't think it's a concern. And then let's walk through it together, validate it. And if it is, we walk through it together. If it isn't, it's like, well, you're saying this, but no one else on the team is seeing it. Can you help us understand better? And then when that person tries and no one else is still seeing it, then fine. We can say, hey, let's keep an eye on it. But right now, I think we're good. And then finally, reward the candor. Thank your team members for what they're offering you, because that small reward actually is what encourages continued conversation. So here are a few examples of go-to questions, and then I'll pause for a second. And I would love for you all, if you wouldn't mind, as I go through each of these, go ahead and put into chat a go-to question that you currently use, again, as I offer the examples, or if one of these examples resonates with you, go ahead and type that in. Or if you'd like to tweak it and make it your own, go ahead and do that and then put it into chat so that we have an opportunity to look at each other's go-to questions. Just pick one, because the idea, again, of the go-to question is to help you out in the leadership manager supervisor position. So let's start off with one very specific for what's something I did in the last week that made it unsafe to work with me. And this unsafe could really have two meanings. Unsafe could be physical. So there's something that I did that put someone else in jeopardy. And this also could be mental emotional, which means you did not feel comfortable coming to me and telling me about this. I felt that you felt unsafe because if you had brought it up, you would have been retaliated against, or there's something negative you feel I would have held it against you. So that specific question can be helpful. The next is, what could I have done differently to make your job safer? So just even asking the question specifically for them, how you could intervene to help them out in their situation. Another one that's a little more generic is, in the last week, where did I get involved that you wish I hadn't? So where did I intervene where I wasn't welcomed? Or the flip side, which is asked very rarely, where did I avoid getting involved where you wish I had? So maybe they saw an opportunity for me to step up, but I actually stayed silent or wasn't paying attention to it, and they thought I could have helped out. And then finally, here's what I tried to accomplish in the last week. How could I have approached it better? So these examples are just examples, but they're also very impactful questions that if we ask these of our team members, the folks that we interact with most, and tailor these questions however you see fit, that will be most beneficial for you individually. This isn't how are we doing? How's the team doing? This is very specific to you. What is it you could do better to help out? So I'll pause there for a second and check the chat. Oh, is it Julietta? Did I pronounce that right? I think I saw a head nod.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry, I was
Yes,
trying to get
no.
him off mute.
That's awesome. Fantastic.
Yes.
So how can I improve my reaction action to correct the problem? But why is that an important go-to question for you, my friend? That's awesome.
Because I'd always want to know how I can fix the problem or prevent the problem. So what do I need to do to be able to do that?
Fantastic.
So that's my go-to question.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. So Julietta got us started. As you have them, if you want to just come off of mute and let us know what it is, terrific. If you want to keep typing it out into chat and send it out to everybody, that would be preferred so that we have an opportunity to learn with and from each other. I'll pause and open it up to anyone else that would like to share verbally or give you about another minute or so to enter those go-to questions into chat.
Bridget had just posted, very generic, what could I have done better?
Yes, and that is, so the invitation, Bridget, would be to, can you get a little more specific? So that's the only invitation here. It's a fine question. What could I have done better? But if you can place it, even giving it a time frame, hey, in the last meeting, what could I have done better? In the past week with our 5 interactions, which one was the most productive for you? Like asking those types of very specific questions will help out just that much more. Thanks, Bridget. And then we'll see if, again, if someone wants to, if you have it written down and just want to come off of mute and let us know, great, and save yourself the typing into chat. Or if you're continuing to type into chat, go for it. And just make sure, I screw this up all the time. I think I can hit enter and it'll send, but in Teams, you have to hit that little paper airplane thing on the bottom right-hand side to send it. Fantastic. So then we'll look for one more and then we'll move on. If there is one more. And is that a thumbs up, Bridget? Is that a thumbs up emoji? That's awesome. Oh, very good. During our last meeting, how could I have responded to your need more effectively? Fantastic, Mitch. I appreciate you entering it in. And then why is that for you? Here come a couple more. That's great. Why is that an important go-to question for you, Mitch?
I think to make sure I'm helping the team out or my direct reports as best I can to help them be successful. If I'm not coaching, mentoring, modeling the way, whatever, effectively for them, or giving them what they need or the tools or whatever, then I'm not doing a good job. Trying to lead an organization.
Very much so. And even specifying, like, for them to give you their needs specifically, then that allows you as their leader, manager, supervisor to be able to customize, tailor your language to each team member. That's a great question. And then we'll finish out on Ronnie for, is there a preferred method of communication? That's a terrific question. Why ask that, Ronnie?
Oh, I've dealt with that a lot in dealing with team members. Some people prefer email, direct calls, or Teams chat, or something alternative. Sometimes even a direct text. If you want to get my attention, send me a text.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, that's fantastic. And then and you're dialed in for what their preferred method is, which is what will make you more effective with communicating with each of them. That's a great one. Fantastic. Well, thank you all very much. And if you want to continue to think on these, go for it. But remember, the importance of getting it, asking the question first, show your own vulnerability, being willing to listen, to understand and accept their perspective is what's going to help us with this conversation, radically candid conversation overall. Fantastic. So there are go-to questions. Now a little bit on focused listening. I'll offer up a couple of facts here, and then I'll open it up fully to questions that you may have. And I'll offer you a model really quickly as a framework for even having radically candid conversations. So I'll do that. It's really simple. I'll type it out in chat in just a minute for what you can use moving forward. But for focused listening, it's really fascinating because even growing up in school, we're taught how to debate, how to write well, how to deliver different messages and tailor things to our audience, but that is all the transmit side. Very rarely, if ever, have we gone to or been to education or a session that focused specifically on listening. Yet listening is actually the more difficult part of any given conversation. So the better we are at listening, the better the conversation goes. And it's also a fact from Harvard Business Review a couple years ago, again, research, that the more we listen, the better others think we are at giving feedback, which there's huge irony here. It's not the transmit side that is weighted the most. It's the listening side that matters. So people perceive us as better givers of feedback when we listen better, which is just fascinating. There are a couple of things that are a challenge to good listening, however. One is by actually neurobiological design. In our brains, our thinking speed is way faster than our speaking speed. So we speak on average about 150 words per minute, and our brains can process north of 450 words per minute. So our brain is always going, even though someone is speaking, I have excess capacity to think, which is great in survival mode, because as I'm talking right now, and if there's someone that comes banging on your door, your brain wants to pay more attention to someone banging on my door than Aaron speaking right now. That's a good thing. The challenge with this is you all may be wondering, oh my goodness, we have 12 minutes left in this conversation. Can Aaron please cut it off so I can go back to my busyness? I have a red day today. It's crazy busy, because my brain is going to fill up that. And I totally get it. But while listening is a serious challenge, it's the most helpful thing we can do for each other. And the research shows that we're better at giving feedback precisely because we're a better listener. So touch on very briefly different levels of listening. And then again, I'll type in a formula that you can use when giving radical candor. But to touch on it very briefly, there are three primary levels of listening. There's internal to yourself, listening to self-talk. There's also listening to the other person, like getting rid of distractions. Closing your computer or closing out on applications while you're in a virtual session so that you're not distracted by emails, you're not distracted by other things, and just carve out that time to truly listen to the other person. And then last is global listening, which is where we have multiple people in a conversation, much like this one, where I'm trying to pay attention to multiple perspectives and hold those all so that we have a productive conversation. So those are the different levels of listening. And again, there's a direct relationship between our ability to listen well and our ability to give feedback. So that's also why I say we want to get it. We want to ask the question first, and then we want to be willing to listen. And then what the cool thing that happens within this environment is that now, because we assume positive intent of each other, we've already had different conversations. And I know that, let's say Bridget is a really good listener. I'm not going to hesitate to go tell her some bad news now, because I know she's a really good listener. She creates a safe space so we can have that conversation and work together to figure it out. That's what it can look like. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions, but I'm also going to put in the formula that I mentioned before, and I can talk to it briefly if you would like. That might be best, just so you understand where I'm coming from for this. Otherwise, happy to answer your conversations with the time we have remaining, or questions with the time we have remaining. Perfect. So while you are might be thinking about questions to ask, just anything that I've covered in this conversation or anything that's coming up for you, maybe some difficulties in having these types of conversations. But a formula we can use for both giving praise and criticism in a radically candid way is to offer context, observation, result, and next steps. So that's what I entered into the chat. And whenever we want to have one of these types of conversations, by providing the context, we allow the person we're talking to mentally set themselves in the situation in which a certain behavior occurred. So by leading with context, it frames the statement. Next, we want to offer the observation of their behavior. What is it they did? What is it they said? Next is the result. So what was the most meaningful outcome of that particular behavior to you personally, other members of the team, whatever you would like to share with them. And then finally is the next step, which can be a statement or question that allows them to then enter the conversation for their perspective, to offer it up. Well, Aaron, I do remember that last meeting, and this is what occurred. I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I was really passionate about it, and evidently I was a little bit more emotional and animated, and I apologize if that turned off a team member, but let's go talk with them, see how they're doing right now. That's what it can look like. So brief explanation there, and then I see Glenn. Let me take a bit.
Yeah, I just want to comment on Glenn's comment in the chat box. I do agree with him. I think it's really important that all of you guys, if you want to continue this is, I know, just a little bit of a sample of it. But
Yes.
if you want to get the book, here it is. I know it's a little blurry, but I believe Kelly has a bunch of, he may have a bunch of them. I can double check with him, but feel free to email me or Kelly and we can see how we can work getting you a copy if that's something that you want.
Yeah, we're sharing them around, or we'll get more if we need them. But there's just so much more detail, obviously, in a 300-page book than Aaron can give us in 30 minutes. But the combination of the two is really helpful. And I'll be candid, Aaron. I'm not even finished with the book yet. I think I'm just starting chapter 5.
Yeah.
But I'm taking it slow because
That's
I think taking it in pieces, and then referring back to the meeting we had before, and then of course hearing you here today. Everything you got to say is helpful, but I think people will get exponentially more out of it if they also read the book.
Without a doubt. Thanks so much, Glenn. Thanks, Natalie. Absolutely. And with the few minutes we have remaining, I'm happy to, Natalie, if you're okay, I see Vitrina's and Kim's questions. And then, yeah, perfect. Catherine, great recommendation. So yeah, if you're okay, awesome. Thanks, Natalie. So Vitrina, how do you apply this lesson in the current COVID environment we live in? A brilliant question. And one of the most powerful things of this particular model, it really is the care personally element. And so that's how, even in this COVID environment, the care personally element is what can help us. There's a relationship component there, but also remember, I mentioned it's really about beyond being just professional. How can you bring your real authentic self to work, which I think are words actually, quite frankly, that get overplayed these days. But how can you just be you in the moment? If you're showing up red to this event or this conversation, let the other person know, hey, I know we need to have this conversation, but right now, boy, am I challenged in the headspace because I have 5 other things that are due in the next hour and a half. And I don't think I'm going to get there, but I know we need to have this conversation. So can we schedule it? Can we do something together and collaborate on it? So it's being the lesson here with the Radical Candor framework is continuing to be in touch with your own feelings, labeling them, letting the other person know, and then having them share as well. And then figure it out together, even if it's a few minutes in silence with each other. And then you're like, yeah, we really just can't have this conversation right now, but let's try Wednesday. That's how you can do it and stay in tune with the other person. Ask them how they're doing. You offer up how you're doing, and then figure out how to move forward together. So that's one recommendation. Kim, it's a great one with body language, even in the virtual space. That's why I invite everybody to have their videos on. And even making the recommendation at times that folks, if you have a space to do it, stand up rather than sit down, which is really interesting. From an energy standpoint, it certainly helps with your own conditioning, not sitting down all the time. But from an energy standpoint, you bring it when you're standing up, and then we're typically more animated while standing up than as opposed to sitting down. And body language, absolutely, nonverbals in general hold a ton of sway. Because in any given communication, we have the words, we have the tone and within which we say them, so the attitude or emotion that comes with it, and then the nonverbals that are expressed. And we read the nonverbals so much that nonverbals actually make up about 80% of any communication. So having videos on, paying attention to them, that makes a huge difference. So great question, Kim. Let me see. Fantastic. So asking for copies, I love it in the chat. Brilliant. So we have a couple minutes left. I'm happy to offer some final thoughts before you move forward. But if you do have any other questions, or if there is one more question, let me know. Come off of mute and ask it, or enter it into the chat. Fantastic. So really the final words that I would offer: try as best you can to model the way. And how can you model the way? An understanding of the framework. Absolutely appreciate Glenn's invitation in the chat. That sends his invitation to read more into the book to get smarter on it. That's a huge step. The next is practice the go-to questions. Like, get over the discomfort if you haven't asked them in the past, and try to create this environment within which you and your team members can have radically candid conversations, because you're setting a tone that says, here's my question, I'm willing to listen. Those are the two biggest components in this space for us being able to table conversations that neither one of us may be comfortable having, but we know we need to have them. And then figure it out together. That next step, that simplified framework, context, observation, result, next step, is a great entryway into productive conversations that help us address these issues and not just let them go by, not be in the space of ruinous empathy, not talk with someone else about someone else in the space of manipulative insincerity. And it tones us down from obnoxious aggression because we know our teammates better, and we're able to communicate in a space within which they are going to receive what we're saying, and we're going to receive what they're saying. So thank you again so much. I really appreciate the invitation, Natalie. Awesome to join you all again. It was great to join some of you, Glenn, and others in September. And I certainly invite you to keep the conversation going, because it will make a difference. It has made a difference on the teams that have adopted it and established a norm of radical candor. And then as we kind of break, I would love to wish you all a safe, healthy, and most memorable holiday season and winter months as we keep moving forward into the new year. And just awesome to join you all today. Thank you so much. Natalie, back over to you, my friend.
Aaron, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being with us today, and same to you. Happy holidays to you and your family. And we will figure out a way to keep this momentum going with Radical Candor. So we really appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Aaron.